Hello knitters, Barbara Benson here. I am an independent knitwear designer who also likes to make videos here on my YouTube channel, Watch Barbara Knit. Make sure to check in the description below where you will find links to all of my online shenanigans, including how to get my patterns to knit up for yourself, how to join the Watch Barbara Knit Facebook group, and how to support me on Patreon. This video has been a long time coming. I mentioned it in a previous video and quite a few people were like, yes, I want to know how to do that. So it took me a little while to figure out how to really try to make it clear yet simple. And here it is. It is how to create a fade in knitting. First thing I would like to mention is what is a fade. Fades became very popular several years ago with certain patterns. Stephen West did some, Andrea Mowry did some, and what a fade is using multiple different colors of yarn, but blending them together to create a multicolor piece that appears to blend seamlessly from one color to another, or fade the colors into each other, which is where the term fade came into. So I'll put a link to the timestamp. You can jump directly ahead to the tutorial, but I want to talk about something that I am going to mention again in the tutorial because it is so important. The number one thing that determines the success of your fade and how seamless it looks is your yarn selection. Using this technique, I know of no secret where you can blend any yarn into any yarn. The yarns have to be selected so that they are similar enough to each other that when you work the transition, they blend together. The example in the tutorial I'm getting ready to show you, I used yarns that didn't blend together so you could see, and that is what's going to happen if you select yarns that are substantially different. You just get stripes. The most successful fades I have seen tend to be what is called a speckled yarn, which is yarn that has multiple flakes of color on it, but kind of in a random speckly pattern, as opposed to a variegated yarn. But you can use a variegated yarn. Blending a variegated yarn with a speckled yarn can be more challenging, not saying it's not doable. And I've even seen people effectively fade things that are in different yarn bases. I would say you probably want to stick to the same yarn weight or at least very similar yarn weights, but it's about yarn selection. So we're going to cut to the tutorial so that you can see the mechanics of it, but cannot reiterate enough. It's about picking the right yarn. I have created a swatch in solid colors so that you can really see what is going on and get a better idea of how this technique works. So what we have here is 3 colors. In a fade, these colors, you would have selected them specifically so they'll blend together nicely. I selected these colors so they wouldn't. And it really is a relatively simple concept, and I think you're going to be amazed when it clicks for you. So you're working in your first color. I'm using my pointer duck so you can see it. I cast on in this blue. When you get to the point where you want to make your transition to the next color, you simply stripe that color in. This is also known as alternating skeins. It is something that we have for years told knitters to do if they are using hand-dyed yarns that the different skeins might be slightly different. It's a way to blend the colors together. So what I've done here is we have, however many rows of the blue there is, and then I brought in the next color and simply started knitting with that new color, and I knit a right side row and a wrong side row. I then dropped that yarn and picked up the blue yarn from beneath. You can see right here, we're carrying the yarn up the side. I will link in the description below to a video on how to carry the yarn up the side when you're knitting stripes. You do not want to cut the yarn at this point. So we did the 2 rows of the yellow or chartreuse, then picked the blue back up and did 2 rows of the blue, right side, wrong side, dropped the blue, picked up the yellow from below and behind, did 2 rows, a right side and a wrong side of the yellow, dropped the yellow, picked the blue back up, and worked 2 final rows, right side, wrong side, dropped the blue, then picked up the yellow and proceeded to knit a solid section in the yellow. At this point, I cut the blue yarn so it wouldn't get in my way, left at least 6 inches. I leave about this much. I just go like this, from my thumb to my pinky, hang loose, and that's how much I leave to weave in. And what you have is this transition period where you're alternating between your color A and your color B to transition between the 2 colors. And what this does is, if the colors are similar to each other, it helps them blend together. I did it a second time so you can see if you're knitting a multi-yarn transition, you might have to do these transitions, a fade, you might have to do this transition multiple times. So it went the same way. I got to the point where I wanted to transition to my next color, so I dropped my yellow and just started knitting with the red. I left 6 inches of yarn to weave in, had to leave a tail, but you just drop the yellow and knit the first stitch with the red. Knit a right side row, wrong side row. Drop the red, pick up the yellow, right side row, wrong side row. Drop the yellow, pick up the red, right side row, wrong side row. Drop the red, pick up the yellow, right side row, wrong side row, drop the yellow, pick up the red, continue knitting in the red, and at that point you could cut the yellow, leaving your tail to weave in. Now, you can do the exact same thing if you're knitting in the round. You're just carrying the yarn up the inside of your tube, and you can actually do your stripes. You don't have to do 2 row stripes at that point. You can do fewer stripes. Now, if your yarns are a lot, more different, they don't blend as well as you would like, you can extend this. You can do more stripes. You can vary your striping pattern. You could do 2 of the new and then 4 of the old, then 4 of the new, then 2 of the old. There's different ways, but what you need to do is follow the instructions in your pattern. Your pattern will tell you how to make this transition, but if you're trying to, do this on your own, this is a basic starting place. So all fading is alternating skeins at the transition using similarly colored yarns. These are very different yarns, and I just wanted you to be able to see what happened when you did this. Now, let's set this one to the side, and we have this one. For this, I picked out 2 more similar colors. Now, this is just what I was able to get out of my stash. This is a more traditionally variegated yarn, and this is a distinctly speckled yarn. Oh, by the way, all these yarns are Fiber Seed Sprout Sock. She sent me a big box of them very early in my YouTube career. I will link to the unboxing because it's a whole lot of fun. If you love fun variegateds and speckleds and interesting colors and innovative stuff, definitely go check out the Fiber Seed. They might not have these exact colors, but I guarantee you there'll be something fun if you're inspired by these colors. I believe this color is Funfetti, and I think this one is Pop Rocks or Astro Pop. It's some, I'm not sure. So, looking at these two, you can see there's some of this blue, a similar blue. There's definitely some similar reds. We've got some pinks going on, but this one has a lot of the white in it, and this one goes to a dark, dark blue, almost black. So they have different tones to them. And it's going to be, because this one is a traditional variegated and this one is a speckle, it's going to be a jump, but I just wanted you to see what the difference is as opposed to doing it between solids. So here I started with this one, and you can see because it's a variegated, it was almost self-striping with the width that I did. It would not look like this on a bigger piece. And so I was knitting and just knitting solid, and right here, pointer duck time, you can see I brought in the other color. So that is right here. So it stopped here, and then we have 2 rows of the lighter color. I dropped it, 2 rows of the darker color, and you can see it's this blue and this dark blue and light blue. You can see them right there. And then I did 2 more rows of the light color, and then 2 rows of the darker color, and you can see we're getting into some of the colors in here that are closer to this color palette. And then I did 2 more rows of this. And then I decided I really wanted to bring in, because I'd gotten to the pink part, so I did 2 more rows of this, the first color, before going into solid in the Funfetti. I'm going to hold it up a little bit closer so you can really see. So these 2 rows are the light color. Well, this light blue is the darker color. And then these 2 rows are the light color, these 2 rows are the dark color, 2 rows of light color, 2 rows of dark color, 2 rows of light color, 2 rows of dark color into the speckle solid. So I did an extra set of stripes. This one I only did 2 and 2. This one I did 3 and 3. Well, this one I did 2, 2, 2, 2. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. This one I did 6. So I wanted to get through the full run of the variegation in this. This is not going to be a concern, particularly in a larger piece. It's just because this was so narrow. But you can see, just even though these aren't ideal for color, you know, these aren't like perfect for fading, you can see the contrast and how this faded. Here, let's turn it this way. How this transition is a lot more seamless than this transition. This very distinct stripes. This, I really had to point it out to you, and it has more of the fade effect, where we're going from one color and fading into the other color out the other end. Again, the longer you stripe, the more seamless the fade is going to be. Now, the most successful fades are in speckled yarn. This is a set from Casual Fashion Queen. I'll link to them in the description. That is a mini set. So you can see this is a 80/20 superwash merino nylon, 80 yards, 20 grams each. So they're little, fingering weight, and I'm going to take them out. These were specifically dyed to fade into each other. Okay? So let's see. This is the lightest color, and then this one. And then you can see how it starts out lighter, or maybe you want to do it. Nope. There we go. So this one starts out lighter and it has some of these orangey colors. And then this one there's more pink, and we've got some purples coming in. And then this one darkens even more and is picking up on these tones. And this is going into these purpley tones, which this still has some red, but it's bridging into purples. And by here, we've gotten into purples and it's moving into blue. So you can see how if you did stripes between each of these, they would just fade into each other, which is why it's called a fade. Whereas if you jumped directly from here to here, it's going to be very drastic and it's not going to look like a fade. So as much as I would like to tell you that there's a secret way to make any colors fade, using this just alternating skein technique, there really isn't. The success of a fade relies a huge percentage on your color selection. And what you're wanting to do is find bridges, find baby steps, find ways that you can move. And so this one, as I said, so this is going, you know, light, a little bit darker, a little bit darker, a little bit darker. Then we're going a little bit light again, and then the colors, like having this middle one have colors that are present in here and in here is what bridges it. Now, the difference between a fade and a gradient is a gradient, most of the time, ombre means it's all monochromatic. It's all one color. So this is an ombre gradient, and it starts, this yarn was specifically dyed, and you would still want to stripe at the transitions, but you don't have to as much. This is fiber optic yarns, and this is a paint box gradient. This one is jet lavender, and that's what it goes through. So we go from this light all the way down to super dark. You can see. And it's designed, and what you would do is, hang on here. What you would do is stripe at each transition to get them to blend seamlessly. And since they're dyed to be so close together, you're not going to see stripes like this. They're going to be really subtle. The big difference between a gradient, and gradients can go through multiple different colors, but the big difference between a gradient and a fade is in the amount of color change that is happening, that we're really shifting, and that we're blending together some different colorways that maybe weren't intended to, but in really fun ways. I hope that clears up any technical questions you might have on how to fade yarns. You are alternating skeins. You're just knitting stripes. How different your yarns are going to dictate how many stripes you have to knit to blend them effectively together. But if you've picked the right yarns, it's not going to take very much. And as I said in where you saw talking hands, you need to find bridge colors. So it's making sure that, you can start with whatever color you want, but then you need to step towards another color. So the framing colors, there has to be one in between it. So if you have one that's mostly pink and you want to shift to something that's mostly orange, that middle one has to be something that has both pink and orange in it. Does that make sense? So picking out the fades, lining them up on a table in your yarn store, or taking screenshots of the pictures on your computer screen and lining them up and seeing how that progression works is going to be your path to best success. And if you have challenges in picking out colors, and if that thing is not like your cup of tea, look for sets that are specifically dyed to fade. You can find those from a lot of different indie dyers, or even talk to them and ask them, like send them an email and say, I want to order these, I want to do a fade. Do they go together? They might say, yeah, they're going to look great, or they might have suggestions for you, because nobody knows the colors better than the yarn dyer themselves. So I hope that this was maybe a little bit surprise to you, that you thought fading was going to be something more complicated, because it's not. It's knit and stripes, it's alternating skeins. And I hope this has empowered you to maybe go out and do a fade of your own. If you like this video, please click that like button. And if you would like to be notified whenever I upload a new video, please subscribe to my channel and select notifications. Thank you so much.